Well, speaking of France, public transport, schools, health and public services all set to be disrupted here in France this Tuesday. Unions calling on workers to walk out and demonstrate their anger over President Emmanuel Macron's planned reforms. Notably, his promise to reduce the number of civil servants by 120,000 before the end of his first term in office. Work stoppages at the national rail company SNCF also roll on. So just over a year now after his election, how is Emmanuel Macron faring? Well, to give us his perspective, we're joined in studio by Plowright, author of The French Exception, which is the first English language biography of Emmanuel Macron. Mr. Plowright, thanks for coming into studio and giving us your time. Firstly, let's start by looking backwards, if you like, and, where Emmanuel Macron came from, this, extraordinary rise, as you put on the front cover of your book, down in a large part, you say, to his good look.
Part of it down to a combination, I would say, of good look and undoubted sort of personal talents of Emmanuel Macron. And as you say, the extraordinary rise, that refers to how this was a politician that up until 2014, when he emerged as economy minister, was someone sort of plucked from obscurity to become economy minister, was really completely unknown to the French public. And then and I sort of chart the start of his presidential ambitions to sometime in 2015. So within a year or just over a year of being a minister for the first time, he actually starts thinking about, maybe I could become, I'm only, at that time, he's only 38, and he starts thinking, maybe I should become president of France. And then we see, obviously, just over a year later, he fulfills his ambition and
absolutely,
takes
much
one of
to
the
the
most powerful jobs in Europe at the age of 39.
Indeed, to the surprise of many, even here in France, observers. Of course, now he's a year into his presidency and he's moved forward very rapidly with a series of his proposed reforms. However, he's meeting with that usual French reaction and these street protests, which has, scuppered similar plans for change in the country before. Do you think he's going to plough on where others have abandoned the cause?
That's right. I think we're in sort of phase two of what was an entirely sort of predictable sequence, which was that every French president comes into office and knows that whatever their plans are, they're going to face resistance in the French street, as it's known, these big demonstrations led by trade unions, which will try to resist some of the moves by the president. So it was something that he anticipated, and I think was predictable for most people who are familiar with French politics. We saw, I say round two because round one we saw in September, October last year, which was when Emmanuel Macron introduced his labour reforms, which were highly contested. Things sort of try and encourage the creation of new jobs in France by making it slightly easier to hire and fire people. And we saw the unions contest that. We saw Emmanuel Macron stick to his guns. He absolutely said he wasn't going to change any of his plans. And he pushed through the legislation successfully in terms of getting that putting that into practice. Now with round two, this is we've seen various things: civil servants, rail workers, and my sense is he's going to do pretty much the same thing he did last autumn, which is he's going to stick to his guns and push this through right to the end.
Now, one criticism he's got, because indeed when he came to power there was a lot unknown about Emmanuel Macron, and one thing that has continued, it was a part of his campaign, has continued throughout the first year, is that he is the president of the rich. Now, he did reduce tax on the wealthy, but overall, do you think that's a fair criticism?
That's something that's a label that's really stuck to him since he first emerged into public life. And I talked about it in 2014 when he becomes economy minister. And part of that is to do with his background. And he was, of course, an investment banker. He worked at Rothschild here in Paris for around 4 years. And so that label of sort of, of a politician who was too close to financial interests of the wealthy really stems from that time in his career before politics. And that has continued, economy minister and now as president. The reason it's gained such traction, as you say, since he became president, is to do with a lot of his economic policy in his first year in office. And a lot of that has been directed at trying to encourage job creation and measures which essentially favour entrepreneurs and wealth creators. We saw him cutting taxes on the most wealthy. He's reducing corporate taxes. There are other measures introduced more recently. He said he wants to scrap a tax which would have, for investors when they take their money out of France, that some of that there's a levy on that money. So a lot of that has been directed very much, as you say, at helping what are high earners, because he sees those people as sort of key to getting the economy moving again and reducing unemployment, which he set absolutely as his number one priority.
OK, it's a good defence of the moves there. But on a social side of things then, we know he's about to announce his plans for the more impoverished neighbourhoods of the country. We've also seen him push through immigration reforms that give asylum seekers less time to file a complaint, deport them quicker. Socially, you know, his whole marketing, he's neither left or right, but socially, where does he lie?
That's right, and I think part of this is to do with a slight imbalance in what was his election programme. The emphasis was always very much on getting the economy going, cutting unemployment, as I said before. And there was one of the criticisms constantly levelled at him by his opponents on the left is that there isn't enough attention to trying to help people at the bottom end of the ladder, those people who are struggling to find jobs, who were worried about globalisation and so forth. And that was really one of the themes of the election, between the idea of those people who benefited from globalisation and those that haven't. And this is a problem for Emmanuel Macron, that he's seen as having a programme which is too geared, too oriented towards those winners. We're going to see him talking about some of the social problems, the really sort of entrenched social problems that we see in deprived areas, and particularly in urban, suburban areas of French cities. We'll see him talking about that later today. And I think that is key, certainly in terms of his how he manages his image and tries to shed this label as the president of the rich, as you say, that he's seen as being more compassionate, and more concerned by those people who are faring less well than the rich and more successful people in French society.
Well, Adam Plowright, there's so much more I'd like to ask you about the EU and all of that, as he's claimed to reform that as well. But we are unfortunately out of time. Adam Plowright, author of The French Exception, thanks so much for coming into studio.
Pleasure. Thank you.